As a general rule, most weapons are best used with the minimum stats required to two-hand. When you two-hand, the strength requirement to wield your weapon is halved. Most weapons will perform their best when infused with lightning, since most enemies in Dark Souls 2 are less resistant to lightning damage, with some exceptions. The following are the best weapons for PvE regardless of their class. Chaos Blade is a katana that is capable of dealing some of the highest DPS in the game due to its high counter damage modifier, fast attacks, and high base damage. Chaos Blade has a slightly high dexterity requirement of 25, inflicts a small amount of self-damage when you successfully hit an enemy, and it can only be acquired early if you choose to use a bonfire ascetic. Once you are able to comfortably meet its dexterity requirement and fully upgrade it, Chaos Blade is one of the best possible picks. If you would like an earlier katana or can't stand the health drain of Chaos Blade, you can use Uchi Katana. Old Nighthammer is a great hammer best infused with lightning if you are using spell buffs. If you plan on using resins, raw infusion is the best option. This great hammer has no scaling, so any investment beyond the minimum stats required to wield it are wasted. The two-handed R2 of this weapon is commonly known as the Pancake, as you can use it to flatten most normal-sized enemies, effectively stun-locking them until they die. Ice Rapier is a thrusting sword that has low stat requirements and is capable of pumping out some of the highest DPS in the game. This is due to its ample base damage, fast attack speed, and high counter damage bonus, which can be further increased by equipping Old Leo Ring. If you would like an early game alternative to Ice Rapier, you can use Rapier. Homunculus Mace is a hammer that has low stat requirements, decently fast attacks, and great base AR. Homunculus Mace deals strike damage, which is usually one of the best physical damage types in the game. This weapon is only acquired in the mid-game. For earlier hammer alternatives, you can choose to use Mace or Craftsman's Hammer. The following are the best weapons for every weapon class. A weapon being the best of its class does not mean it's amazing or that it is a good choice overall. It just means it outperforms other options within its class. Bandit Axe has decently quick R1s coupled with high base damage, allowing it to dish out excellent DPS. Since it is found early in No Man's Wharf, it is the best option if you would like to use an axe. Mannequin Claws should mainly use the Power Stance L1 attack, as all other attacks are worse in nearly every scenario. This weapon is a rare drop that will need to be farmed twice for optimal damage. Claw weapons are one of the classes that you would want to consider only if you were a more advanced player due to them needing to be power stance for best performance. To do this, you need 1.5 times the strength and dexterity requirements of the weapon rounded down. This means that claw weapons require heavy stat investment for mediocre damage. Murakumo is the best curved greatsword available in the early game, as it is sold by Weaponsmith Ornifex. Its 20 dexterity requirement is fairly steep to meet early into the game, but it makes up for it with its decently high damage output. When you gain access to it, Curved Dragon Greatsword is the best curved greatsword for PvE. It's only acquired in the late base game, but is capable of dealing significant amounts of damage. The R2 of this weapon consumes durability to shoot out a burst of wind, and when both the projectile and the sword connect, it will deal extra damage to the enemy, but it's usually not worth using over 2 R1 attacks in quick succession. Mannequin Saber has high base damage for such a light weapon, along with extremely fast attacks, making it the best option for the early game if you would like to use a curved sword. The low 1.5% drop rate at base item discovery can make Mannequin Saber tedious to farm, though it is easier to upgrade compared with Warp Sword. Warp Sword is the best overall pick for curved swords due to its 130 counter stat and fast move set. This weapon is a boss soul trade that requires that you beat Flexile Sentry and No Man's Wharf and trade the boss soul with Strayed and Lost Bastille. Warp Sword has a high 25 dexterity requirement and upgrades using Petrified Dragon Bones, meaning it might not be worth switching to until later in the game. Dagger is the best dagger until you can get Royal Dirk. It is starting equipment for the Sorcerer class and can be found in Things Betwixt. Daggers should be left uninfused and buffed with resins while you aim for the 40 dexterity soft cap. Royal Dirk has higher damage and significantly more range than Dagger, as well as sporting the highest durability of its class, and should be used when it becomes available. Unlike Dagger, reaching the soft cap of 40 dexterity will not do all that much for it, meaning it is best with the minimum stats to two-hand. Royal Dirk can only be acquired very late into the game from Chancellor Welliger after obtaining the Giant's Kinship. For ideal damage, you would use Cestus in the right hand and leave the left hand as a bare fist with Vanquisher's Seals slotted as a ring. This setup results in a faster moveset than 2 bare fists alone. Vanquisher's Seal is a ring that is rather hard to acquire, as you have to give 50 Awe Stones to the Coven of Champions. Fist weapons should mainly use the Power Stance L1 attack. Outside of challenge runs, it is not advised to use fist weapons. Great Axe can be acquired early from Steadyhand McDuff and Lost Bastille. Its 32 strength requirement can be lowered to 16 by two-handing. It is never worth it to get the one-handed strength requirement for this weapon. Great Axe is capable of dealing decent damage per hit and should be used as a stepping stone to a better Great Axe. Crypt Blacksword is best raw infused in conjunction with spell buffs, as resins cannot be applied to this sword. You will need to use a bonfire ascetic on the Rotten or go into New Game Plus to trade Old Dead One's soul with Ornifex to get this weapon, though it is still easy to get fairly early. Officially classed as an Ultragreatsword, it has the Great Axe moveset and is considered by the community to be a Great Axe. Wielding this sword is best considered in the mid to late game when you are able to meet its stat requirements and fully upgrade it using Petrified Dragon Bones. Crypt Blacksword is capable of dealing higher counter damage, is slightly lighter, and requires lower strength than King's Ultragreatsword, making it a worthwhile consideration. Dealing innate dark damage and slash rather than strike are the main drawbacks of this weapon. King's Ultragreatsword has the Great Axe moveset and is considered by the community to be a Great Axe. This is a late game weapon due to needing to trade Vendrick's soul with Ornifex. Compared with Crypt, King's Ultragreatsword weighs more and is more stat intensive, but deals considerably higher damage due to it being a strike weapon, though Crypt will tend to deal higher counter damage a majority of the time. King's is overall a slightly better pick, but it is up to user preference. Old Knight Hammer, as mentioned previously, is one of the best weapons for PvE and the best of its class. Its extremely high damage combined with the fantastic pancake move allows this great hammer to trivialize most areas in the game. This weapon can be farmed early into the game and hides Tower of Flame, or can be picked up later in the mid-game. Due to its extremely low durability, using the repair spell and repair powder is a must if you plan on using this weapon early on. Dragon Tooth has fairly high stat requirements, needing 10 more strength to two-hand compared with Old Knight Hammer. This weapon has about 2 more points of damage compared to Old Knight Hammer at 25 strength when properly infused with lightning, but it can be considered as an alternative due to its significantly higher durability and slightly longer reach. Dragon Tooth can be found early in Belfry Luna and does not need to be farmed. Similar to most hammers, the two-handed R2 of this weapon can pancake most area enemies. Bastard Sword is usually the most relevant early game greatsword due to the fact that it is found in the Forest of the Fallen Giants. It is recommended to switch to something a little bit stronger as soon as you are able to. Blue Moon Greatsword is drastically better than Bastard Sword, but requires you to kill Benhard of Jugo if you do not want to wait until the end of base game to acquire it. Blue Moon Greatsword is technically the fake version of Moonlight Greatsword, but do not confuse the two because Blue Moon Greatsword is vastly superior in terms of damage potential. The Halberd class tends to have very narrow sweet spots, sometimes making it hard to deal consistent damage. Hitting in a sweet spot means you deal more damage, but since the spot is narrow on halberds, you will often hit a sour spot, making you deal less damage overall. Roaring Halberd, raw infused, is less stat intensive than other halberds and can be found early into the game via trading the Skeleton Lord's Soul with Strayed. This weapon does have an odd 12 intelligence and faith requirement, but that is easy to meet since you will always want to use Dark Weapon as your buff. Roaring Halberd requires Petrified Dragon Bones to upgrade, so it will be harder to reinforce early. Mastodon Halberd is more intensive in terms of strength and dexterity compared with Roaring Halberd, and can also be farmed fairly early into the game in Doors of Pharaohs. This halberd has the most forgiving sweet spot on this list and should be considered over Roaring Halberd due to its ease of use and upgrading. Drakekeeper's Warpick is the best option when you can acquire it, as it is a rare enemy drop only found in Dragon Shrine in the late game. The game menu says its counter modifier is 100 when it is actually 120. Though it is a great hammer, it has the halberd moveset and as such also utilizes the sweet spot mechanic. Mace is starting equipment for the Cleric class or can be purchased early from Leningrass and Majula. This weapon is excellent for early game and should be used until you can get your hands on a better hammer such as Homunculus Mace or Craftsman's Hammer. Craftsman's Hammer is available quite early from Blacksmith McDuff and Lost Bastille and takes Twinkling Titanite instead of regular Titanite to upgrade. If you are willing to search around for Twinkling Titanite and Lost Bastille, it can be very easy to upgrade this weapon early. Homunculus Mace is overall the best hammer in the game. Featuring low stat requirements, decently fast attacks, and great base AR, this weapon is only acquired in the mid-game and during Laic Castle. Black Dragon Warpick Raw Infused has the same general damage as Homunculus Mace, but has higher stat requirements. When using this hammer, considerations need to be made since it deals thrust damage and does not deal strike damage like most hammers. If an enemy is less resistant to strike, use Homunculus Mace. But if the enemy is less resistant to thrust, Black Dragon Warpick will fare better due to counter damage while using Old Leo Ring. Katana is a great weapon to use while you are on your way to fully upgrading and getting the stats to wield Chaos Blade. Katana has lower stat requirements than Chaos Blade and is available much earlier. Chaos Blade is the best possible katana for PvE purposes once you are able to fully upgrade it with petrified dragon bones and meet its slightly high dexterity requirement of 25. Chaos Blade is one of the best DPS weapons in the game due to its significant counter damage modifier, fast attacks, and high base damage. Grand Lance can be found early into the game in Scholar version, but is mid-game in Vanilla version. This lance has requirements that can be a bit steep for the early game, but you should be able to comfortably use it after gaining souls from the first few areas. Since Grand Lance deals thrust and strike damage and has a 160 counter modifier, it pairs well with Old Leo Ring. Bone Scythe can be found fairly early as it is made by trading the covetous demon soul with Strayed. Since this weapon is upgraded with petrified dragon bones and has fairly high 14 strength and 20 dexterity requirements when two-handing, it is not recommended to wield this weapon until you can fully upgrade it. Winged Spear can be acquired early from Steady Hand McDuff and has lower stat requirements compared with Gargoyle Bident, making Winged Spear the best early game pick. Due to this weapon dealing mainly thrust as its damage type, most attacks can be boosted by Old Leo Ring for an increase to counter damage. Gargoyle Bident is acquired by trading the Belfry Gargoyle Soul with Strayed. It is the best option when you can acquire it, and just like any spear, its counter damage is boosted further by Leo Ring. If you decide to meet the full one-handed strength requirement of 22, it is worth it to leave this weapon uninfused and aim for the strength soft cap of 40 while using resins to buff. Broadsword is starting equipment for the Knight class and can be purchased early into the game from Blacksmith Leningrast. If you are set on using a straight sword for an entire run, you should switch from this one to a better option as soon as it becomes available. Varangian Sword should be used over Broadsword as soon as you are able to get it. This sword is an uncommon enemy drop from Varangian Sailors and No Man's Wharf, which can be farmed after beating Dragon Rider. Black Dragon Sword is the best choice overall to switch to when you can get it, as it is a rare enemy drop from Dragon Knights and Dragon Shrine in the late game. Rapier is the best early game thrusting sword, and can hold its own well into the late game due to its fast attack speed, low stamina consumption, and high base damage. You can purchase this weapon from Blacksmith Leningrast once his shop is unlocked. Like all weapons with thrusting damage, it will benefit from the Old Leo Ring to boost counter damage. Espada Ropera is available only in the late game as a gift from Chancellor Welliger after obtaining the Giant's Kinship. This weapon requires higher stat investment than Rapier, but offers slightly more damage. This should only be considered as a replacement for Rapier if you do not own the DLC to get Ice Rapier. Ice Rapier can be farmed in the Crown of the Ivory King DLC and should be used over Rapier once you have access to it. With low stat requirements, extremely high damage, and fast attacks, it is one of the best PvE weapons on this list. Similar to Rapier, this weapon will benefit from Old Leo Ring for a boost to its already high counter damage stat. Santir Spear, raw infused, is the best early option when acquired as treasure from Doors of Pharaohs. While classed as a spear, it has a hybrid Twinblade Halberd moveset once broken. To break the stone lump off this weapon efficiently, you can attack Dina and Tilo's nest and things betwixt. After Santir Spear is broken, it will deal more damage and have infinite durability. Red Iron Twinblade is the best Twinblade option overall and can only be found in Shrine of Amana as treasure in the late game. This weapon has high durability, but due to hitting 4 times per light attack, it tends to degrade in durability rather quickly, so carrying a few spare repair powders is recommended. Greatsword is sometimes called Guts' Greatsword or Gugs by the community. Before you decide to use this weapon, just remember that you are not him and you created your own struggles. Greatsword can be acquired early as treasure from No Man's Wharf or can be purchased in Shaded Woods from Head of Vengarl. Greatsword is good to use as a stepping stone to a better Ultragreatsword such as Lost Sinner Sword. Lost Sinner's Sword can be acquired by trading the Soul of Lost Sinner with Ornifex and should be used once you can get it. This sword scales negatively off sin, meaning the damage will go down depending upon how many points of sin you have, but this scaling shouldn't be taken into account for PvE. It also deals self-damage upon successful hits similar to Chaos Blade. This sword is one of the lightest of its class and is one of the highest damage per hit weapons in the game once fully upgraded with Petrified Dragon Bones. Zweihander can be found in Iron Keep inside a chest and is one of the lightest of the Ultragreatswords. This sword is a good pick if you'd like an Ultragreatsword with a horizontal moveset, but do not have Ivory King Ultragreatsword or the ability to afford its stat requirements. Ivory King Ultragreatsword is best used uninfused, and this is one of the few weapons where eventually having 40 strength and dexterity is recommended. It is best to get at least the one-handed stats of this weapon of 30 strength and dexterity if you want to use this weapon through areas due to the fact that the two-handed moveset will always do the special beam attack. The beam attack of this weapon degrades 10 durability per use. You may have to consume multiple repair powders at a time to keep up with the weapon degradation if you are utilizing the beam. You can use a maximum of 19 beam attacks before having to use 6 to 7 repair powders to restore full durability. Ivory King Ultragreatsword cannot be buffed. Old Whip can only be acquired by giving a petrified something or a smooth and silky stone to Dina and Tilo and things betwixt. Old Whip has boosted damage against hollow enemies and has low durability. If you hit with the tip of the whip, it will deal less damage overall and consume less durability. When you hit with the shaft of the whip, it will consume more durability, but you will see a significant increase in damage. It is important to keep repair powder on you if you plan on using this weapon.